Marcus had been doing deliveries for about 8 months when this happened. The money was decent, and he preferred working nights when there was less traffic and the orders paid better. Most nights were routine. Pick up food, drop it off, move to the next order. Simple. It was a Thursday night in late September. Around 11:30 p.m., Marcus received an order for a local Chinese restaurant. The delivery address was in a neighborhood he'd been to a few times before. Nothing unusual. The customer had tipped well, $15 for a 2-mile delivery, so Marcus accepted without hesitation. He picked up the food and started driving toward the address. The GPS guided him through the quiet residential streets. Most houses were dark except for porch lights. As he got closer to the destination, he noticed the neighborhood getting progressively darker. Fewer street lights, older homes, larger properties with more space between them. When Marcus arrived at the address, his headlights illuminated a 2-story house set back from the road. The property was completely dark. No porch light, no lights visible through any windows, just a dark silhouette against the night sky. The driveway was long, maybe 70 feet, leading up to the house through overgrown trees. Marcus checked his phone. This was definitely the right address. The delivery instructions said, "Leave on front porch. Do not ring doorbell. Do not knock." He'd seen similar instructions before. People with sleeping kids or dogs that bark. Nothing weird about that. But something about this house felt wrong. Maybe it was how dark it was, or how isolated it felt, despite being in a residential area. Marcus pulled into the driveway and slowly drove up toward the house. His headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the front porch. That's when he noticed something that made him uncomfortable. There were no cars in the driveway, no vehicles visible anywhere, but the order had been placed 20 minutes ago, which meant someone was supposedly home. He parked about 30 feet from the porch, leaving his engine running and headlights on. Marcus grabbed the food bag and stepped out of his car. The only sound was the hum of his engine and the crunch of gravel under his feet. As he walked toward the porch, his phone buzzed. A message from the customer. "Thank you for not screaming. Most drivers do." Marcus reported the delivery as completed and immediately ended his shift for the night. He drove straight home, his hands still shaking. The next day, out of curiosity, he looked up the address on Google Maps. The street view showed the same house, but in daylight, it looked abandoned, boarded windows, overgrown yard. Clearly, no one had lived there in years, but the DoorDash order had been real. The payment went through. The customer account was active. Marcus never delivered to that address again. In fact, he changed his delivery zone settings to exclude that entire neighborhood. 2 weeks later, he saw another driver post in a local DoorDash Facebook group. The driver had delivered to the same address and experienced something similar. A dark house, strange messages, and something watching from the upstairs window. The post had dozens of comments from other drivers. Many had delivered there. All of them quit immediately after. Marcus still does deliveries, but only during the day now. He refuses to work past sunset, and whenever he receives an order with instructions that say, "Leave immediately," he cancels it. Some deliveries, he learned, aren't worth the tip. Rachel was 31 years old and had been doing food delivery part-time for about a year. She worked evenings and weekends to supplement her income from her day job. Most deliveries were straightforward, but one night in early October changed everything. It was a Saturday night, around 10:45 p.m. Rachel received an order from a Thai restaurant for delivery to an apartment complex in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. The complex was one she'd delivered to before, a large building with 12 floors. Older construction from the 1970s, but well-maintained. The order total was $63, and the customer had left a $20 tip, so Rachel accepted. She picked up the food and drove to the apartment building. When she arrived, she texted the customer that she was in the lobby, as was her usual practice. The customer responded immediately. "Apartment 7G, please bring to door. Elevator broken. Use stairs," Rachel sighed. 7 flights of stairs carrying food wasn't ideal, but the tip was good. She entered the building through the main entrance. The lobby was empty and dimly lit. The elevator doors straight ahead had an out-of-order sign taped to them. She found the stairwell entrance and started climbing. The stairwell was poorly lit, with only one working light per landing. Her footsteps echoed in the concrete shaft. By the time she reached the 7th floor, she was slightly out of breath. Rachel pushed through the heavy door into the 7th floor hallway. The corridor was long and narrow with apartments on both sides. The lighting was dim and several bulbs were burned out. She checked the numbers on the nearest doors. 7A, 7B. She needed 7G, which would be further down. As she walked down the hallway, she noticed it was completely silent. No TV sounds, no conversations, nothing. Just the hum of the building's ventilation system. When she reached apartment 7G, she knocked on the door. No response. She knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Rachel pulled out her phone to call the customer, but before she could dial, she heard a sound from inside the apartment. Not footsteps, more like furniture scraping across a floor. Then a voice, muffled through the door. "Leave it outside. I'll get it in a minute." Rachel set the food bag down in front of the door and took a photo for the delivery confirmation. As she turned to walk away, she heard the voice again, clearer this time. "Wait!" She stopped and turned back toward the door. "Yes? Did you use the elevator or the stairs?" the voice asked. Rachel thought it was an odd question. "The stairs. The elevator's broken." There was a long pause. Then the voice said, "No, it's not. The elevator works fine. You need to leave, right now." Rachel's confusion turned to concern. "What do you mean?" "There's an out-of-order sign." The voice cut her off, more urgent now. "That's not my apartment. Check the number." Rachel looked at the brass numbers on the door. 7G. Apartment 7G. Exactly what the customer had specified in the app. But as she stared at the numbers, she noticed something wrong. The letter G was slightly crooked, like it had been removed and put back. She reached out and touched it. The letter moved. It wasn't screwed in properly. It was just resting in place. She carefully lifted the letter G away from the door. Behind it, carved into the wood, was the letter B. This wasn't apartment 7G. This was 7B. Someone had changed the letter. Rachel's blood ran cold. She stepped back from the door just as she heard movement inside the apartment. Not footsteps, something dragging across the floor, getting closer to the door, and breathing. Heavy, labored breathing right on the other side. Rachel didn't wait to see what would happen next. She turned and ran down the hallway toward the stairwell. Behind her, she heard the apartment door unlock and slowly creak open. She didn't look back. She hit the stairwell door at full speed and took the stairs down 2 at a time. As she descended, she could hear footsteps in the stairwell above her. Someone was following. The footsteps were uneven, like someone limping or dragging a leg, and they were fast. Faster than they should be. Rachel burst through the lobby door and sprinted to her car. She jumped in, locked the doors, and immediately called 911 as she drove away. While she was on the phone with the dispatcher, she received a notification from UberEats, the information they needed. The next day, Rachel learned that the police had entered apartment 7B and found evidence of the 2 missing drivers. The man who had been living there was arrested. The case made local news. Rachel quit doing deliveries that week. She couldn't shake the feeling of how close she'd come to becoming the 3rd driver who never came back. She still thinks about the sound of those footsteps in the stairwell, the uneven, dragging steps that were somehow getting closer, no matter how fast she ran. Sometimes, late at night, she wakes up from dreams where she's back in that hallway, staring at the crooked letter G, and she hears that voice through the door. David was 27 and had been doing Amazon deliveries for almost 2 years. He liked the job, decent pay, set routes, and he didn't have to deal with customers face to face. Just scan, deliver, and move on. He typically worked the early morning shift, starting at 5 a.m. and finishing by 1 p.m. One morning in mid-November, David was assigned a route that included several rural addresses on the outskirts of his normal delivery area. These were houses spaced far apart, long driveways, lots of woods, the kind of places where you might not see another person for miles. Around 8:30 a.m., just after sunrise, David pulled up to an address on his list. The house was set back from the road, connected by a gravel driveway that disappeared into the trees. The house itself was old but well-maintained, 2 stories, white paint, black shutters. David grabbed the package from the back of his van. It was a medium-sized box, about 12 inches square, surprisingly heavy for its size. The label said fragile. He walked up the driveway toward the house. The porch light was still on from the night before. As he approached the front door, David noticed something unusual. There were already packages on the porch, not just 1 or 2, at least a dozen packages of various sizes, all stacked against the wall next to the door. All of them from Amazon, all of them unopened. Some of the packages had delivery dates from weeks ago. One box near the bottom of the stack was dated from 3 months prior. It didn't make sense. Why would someone order all these packages and never bring them inside? David set the new package down with the others, took a photo for delivery confirmation, and turned to leave. That's when he saw it. Through the window next to the front door, barely visible through the gap in the curtain, was a person standing just inside, completely motionless, staring directly at him. David froze. The person didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, maybe 3 feet from the door, watching him. David couldn't make out details in the dim interior light, but the figure's posture was wrong. Too stiff, too still. "Hello?" David called out. No response. The figure didn't move. David quickly walked back to his van. That night, David couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen. The unopened packages, the motionless figure. Something about it felt deeply wrong. He mentioned it to his supervisor the next day, asking if there had been any complaints about that address. His supervisor checked the system and went quiet. After a moment, she said, "That address was flagged last week. The homeowner passed away 4 months ago, lived alone, no next of kin. The estate is still in probate, and the house is supposed to be empty." David felt his stomach drop. But someone's been ordering packages there for months. His supervisor nodded slowly. "We know. The estate lawyer contacted us. Someone's been using the deceased owner's Amazon account to order packages. The credit card is still active, being paid from the estate. We've been trying to figure out who's placing the orders, but the account access is coming from inside the house. The IP address traces to the home's Wi-Fi network." David thought about the figure he'd seen standing in the window, standing in the doorway. He'd assumed it was a person, but now he wasn't sure what he'd seen. "Has anyone checked inside the house?" David asked. "Police did a welfare check 2 weeks ago," his supervisor said. "House was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no belongings. Everything was removed when the owner died. Just empty rooms." David never delivered to that address again. Amazon eventually suspended deliveries there after more drivers reported seeing the figure in the window. But the packages kept being ordered, week after week, always delivered to the porch, never brought inside. 6 months later, David heard through another driver that the house had finally been sold. The new owners found all the packages still stacked on the porch, dozens of them, rotting and weathered. When they opened the boxes, every single one was empty, no contents. Just empty boxes ordered and delivered to an empty house. The police investigated the Amazon account and found something disturbing. Every package ordered had been addressed to the name of the deceased owner, but the delivery instructions added to each order were always the same. "Leave on porch. I'm watching from the window. I see you." David still works for Amazon, but he refuses any route that includes rural addresses, and every time he delivers a package now. These 3 stories remind us that some of the most terrifying encounters happen during the jobs we think are routine and safe. If you work deliveries and have your own story to share, send it to me. I read every submission. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. And maybe think twice before taking that late-night delivery.